Welcome back to Real Life Recaps. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Hello everyone and thank you for watching my videos. Today's first story was posted by Winter Reward 651. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my father because he disowned me after knowing that I wasn't his biological child? So let's get into it, I guess. Almost a decade ago, my dad found out that my mom cheated on him with another guy years ago through my mother's sister. Back then, my mom and aunt weren't on good terms, so she told Dad everything. My parents fought over this, and Dad filed for divorce. We all got DNA tested, and out of 3 children, I was the only one who wasn't his. It felt so bad to know that your dad, who raised you for almost 16 years, wasn't really your dad. That didn't feel as bad as him kicking me out of his house when I was begging him not to. I wished I could just kill myself when he disowned me. My mom went into a depressive state and would just spend all day in bed and would just get out to use the toilet. My grandparents lived in a different state, but they did everything they could to make our lives better. I needed to come home from school, do all the chores in the house, and tend to my mom and check on her. I did everything that could possibly be done to make sure we lived. I would ask my mom who my real dad was, but all I got was screaming or a hit. My siblings and grandparents from Dad's side tried to make things right between me and Dad, but he wouldn't budge. Apparently, I was just a reminder that Mom cheated on him and nothing else. I remember my 17th birthday when no one remembered that it was my birthday. I cried to the point where I didn't have any tears left even when I graduated from high school. Only my grandmother came. Why didn't my feelings matter to anyone? Why was I supposed to endure this? After I returned from my graduation, I told Mom that I was leaving if she doesn't tell me who my real dad is, and this time she did tell me who he was. I met him after finding where he lived. I discovered that I have a half-brother and that my real father was a widower and a doctor. He didn't know that I existed or the fact that Mom was married. It took us time, but we built a bond, and he helped to get through college and he walked me down the aisle. He even got Mom some help, and I am forever grateful to him. Well, present-time me, I, 26 female, was married to my lovely fiancé last week, and I didn't invite my ex-dad to my wedding. He tried to contact me before the wedding, but I don't want anything to do with him. My siblings and grandparents from ex-dad's side say I am wrong and that he wanted to come and make things right, but I don't want to make things right. He had the right to abandon me, so I have a right to do the same. He isn't my father. He was once upon a time, but not now. I understand that he was hurt, but I was hurt too. Everyone tells me to let go of the grudge, but I just don't want him in my life. And no, I won't give him another chance. My husband understands, but no one else seems to understand what I had to go through to get to where I am now. He cannot just come to my life 9.5 freaking years later and expect things to be all right. Am I the a-hole? And now for some comments. Silver, Forever, 7476 said, I don't blame you at all for not inviting him. He made his choice when he disowned you, and that caused a deep hurt that doesn't just go away. You've already rebuilt your life and found a real father figure who supported you. You have every right to protect your peace and keep him out. It's not about holding a grudge. It's about making sure you don't let someone back in who caused you so much pain. You owe him nothing, especially not forgiveness on his terms. Official Ivy Rose said, You're so right. It's not about being bitter. It's about protecting yourself from more pain. Nobody should have to forgive just because someone suddenly wants back in. Earth, to Freya said. You are so right. I feel a bit guilty but avoid contacting my estranged father, but he is not easy to interact with, so I avoid him for my peace and well-being. I don't hate him. He just doesn't feel like a parent because my parents divorced when I was 3, and he was mostly absent. Even when he used his visitation, he left me with my grandma. Unfortunately, now he is my only living close relative, but he always makes me feel bad just when talking, because he will find some fault with me to complain about. He is getting old, doesn't have the best health, and has constant money issues, so I feel a bit guilty avoiding him, but he wasn't there for me most of my life, so why should I help him now? I hate it when all the distant relatives nag me that I should be the bigger person just because he is my bio father. And now for our second story, it was posted by Anxious Committee 42. Am I the a-hole for leaving my husband at the hospital after he refused to be in the delivery room with me? This happened 2 months ago, but it's still causing major friction in my family, so I need some outside opinions. I-29. Female and my husband, Jake, 32, have been together for 6 years, married for 3. We were both ecstatic when we found out we were expecting our first child. Pregnancy was tough for me, though I had severe morning sickness, gestational diabetes, and was generally miserable. But Jake was supportive and sweet the whole way through, which made it bearable. As we got closer to my due date, we discussed birth plans. I was adamant that I wanted Jake in the delivery room. I needed his support, and he'd always agreed. However, a few weeks before my due date, Jake started acting strange. He was distant, distracted, and wouldn't engage in any baby-related discussions. I thought he was just anxious about becoming a dad, so I didn't press him too much. The day I went into labor, Jake drove me to the hospital but seemed off. He was quiet and kept checking his phone. When we got there, he pulled the nurse aside and spoke to her privately. She came back and told me Jake wouldn't be in the delivery room because he was uncomfortable with blood and medical procedures. I was stunned. He'd never mentioned this before. I begged him to stay, told him I needed him, but he just kept saying, "I can't do this." I was heartbroken and furious, but I didn't have much time to dwell on it as my contractions were getting stronger. Jake said he'd be in the waiting room and kissed me on the forehead before leaving. I was left alone, crying and feeling utterly abandoned. Labor was long, painful, and traumatic. I was alone the entire time except for the medical staff. When our son was finally born, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. The nurse handed me my son, and all I felt was a deep sadness that Jake wasn't there to share this moment. After I was taken to a recovery room, I asked the nurse to get Jake. She came back and said he'd left the hospital hours ago. I couldn't believe it. I called him repeatedly, but he didn't answer. Finally, I sent him a text saying I was done and he could find his own way home. I didn't see him until the next day. He showed up at the hospital with flowers and an apology, saying he'd panicked and needed some air. He claimed he'd gone home to shower and change and fell asleep, which I didn't buy for a second. I told him I didn't believe him. I was overwhelmed with anger and hurt, and I told him he had let me down in the worst possible way. He kept apologizing, saying he knew he'd messed up and he'd do anything to make it right. I didn't want him near me or our son at that moment, so I asked him to leave. He tried to protest, but I told him I needed time to process everything. He left, and I spent the rest of my hospital stay alone with my baby, trying to grapple with the enormity of what had happened. Since then, Jake has been trying to make amends. He's been taking parenting classes, attending therapy, and is constantly trying to be present and supportive. But I can't shake the feeling of betrayal. He abandoned me at one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. Every time I look at him, I remember being alone in that delivery room, terrified and in pain, wondering why the person who promised to be by my side wasn't there. My family is split. Some think I'm being too hard on Jake, that he made a mistake and is clearly remorseful. They say he's a good father and partner otherwise, and I should focus on moving forward for the sake of our child. Others think what he did was unforgivable and I should leave him. They believe I'll never truly trust him again, and that's no foundation for a marriage. I'm torn. I do still love him, and I know he loves me and our son. But part of me wonders if I'll ever get over this. Was it just a moment of weakness on his part, or a sign of something deeper that I can't overlook? So, am I the a-hole for leaving him at the hospital and now considering leaving him for good? It's 1966 said. Why did he keep checking his phone? That's totally suspect to me. I think there was more going on than showers and sleep. OP replied, "We all think so too, But since there's no evidence and he's not speaking, we're all going on several assumptions. Annie Marsh, 69, said, "He's not speaking? Didn't take long for him to give up. This man is trash." Haunting Reaction, 6124, said, "He kept checking his phone while you were in labor and then did a disappearing act? Yeah, those people in your life who say he is a good father and partner need to be asking who had his unwavering attention to the point he abandoned you and your child. I would be checking his phone, computer, and past behavior for answers." It's Ash 14 said. "My thoughts, too. That checking his phone constantly, like he had to be somewhere by a certain time. If she can check his locations, see where he was and where he went after, who doesn't want to meet their child for a day? Who doesn't check and make sure their child and wife even made it through delivery alive?" OP replied, "Some of my friends suspect he might have been with another woman somewhere far, making it hard for him to even come day same day. He came back over 24 hours after I gave birth." Let Me Read, Please said, "Just something to think over. Who was your power of attorney if anything went wrong? Who was going to advocate for you and your son? What were your plans for if something did go wrong, and who knew them? If it was your husband, then he not only left as he was scared, but he left all your prior decisions in the rear view behind him and left both of your health in other people's hands." Natalie Chaco said, "Gut Reaction says the same, but even if he wasn't cheating, leaving you in labor? He cheated you out of feeling safe and supported. He robbed you of your trust in him. He cheated you out of feeling like someone was with you to advocate for you. He cheated you out of a happy birthing experience. He robbed you of support and comfort of the day a woman needs it most. He cheated you out of a normal married delivery experience and seems to think he can make up for it. You need to decide right now if he could even possibly ever make up for it. Can he ever rebuild trust? If you got cancer or some other major disease or diagnosis, will he abandon you again? With a child this time? Will he flee the hospital if you get in an accident? Will he go AWOL if your child is ever hurt? Can you even trust him to be there if it's your most dire hour anymore? You could have died. Your child could have died. Imagine all that grief you would have bore alone. He needs to realize that this may be unforgivable and it should be unforgivable. You could have died. If you want to move on with him, get into couples counseling and get a backup emergency contact ASAP. Personally, though, I would never be able to trust my partner ever again. What do you think about these two new Reddit stories? I'll be keeping an eye on them too. See if there are any updates in the future. Let me know in the comment section, and thank you for watching and have a great day.